Welcome to another episode of Pixelvalve. In today's episode, I will be comparing my modern trash find lens that I repaired in the previous episode to a vintage lens with a similar focal length. Stay tuned to see how it goes.
Round 1. Fight!
On the left-hand side, we have a Nikon 55 to 200mm focal length DX kit lens, produced between 2006 and 2010. It's a fully plastic constructed lens and about 15 years old. On the right we have the Tokina SD 70 to 210mm focal range lens. It's a native Nikon AI lens from about 1986. It's an all-metal construction and about 35 years old. The Nikon is fully automatic with autofocus and metering. So the Nikon lens definitely has an advantage over the Tokina lens. The Tokina lens is fully manual and has no electronics or metering. What it does have is relatives in the cinema industry from Anginoux, pronounced Anginu. And I wonder if there could be any influence still lingering somewhere within this little cheap zoom lens. It certainly does feel like a good quality lens in the hand. It's known that Tokina collaborated with Anginu at some point in the mid-80s and shared some of that formula with Tokina's ATX range of lenses in the early 90s. So who knows, perhaps some of that influence may have found its way or leaked through into other lenses and other lines of production. It's definitely a possibility, perhaps. I'm going to take some shots now. I'm going to go for a walk and find some nice things to photograph. So we're going to have some samples. Hold on a second. The first two shots that I took was while I was out walking with the kids. And the first thing I notice about the Nikon lens is that it does have some kind of weird blurring at the bottom left of the screen. And it doesn't look quite right. Something's wrong there. It's not lens mud, it's not fungus, and it's not smear. The glass looks fairly clean. It's not perfectly clean, but it still should produce a better image. My feeling is this could be the glass not seating properly when I repaired the lens, because it's not screwed in place. The Tokina image looks okay. It's clear and sharp, but it does have a slight warmer tone. I'd probably go so far as to say it has a magenta hue that could probably be from the multi-coatings. But it's still a nice and sharp image with nice contrast. Back at home, I'm looking at the Nikon lens to figure out what exactly went wrong. The first thing I notice is that the lens is flexible. It bends. And a precision instrument like this lens should never bend. Is this inherent of plastic construction? Old age, or is it totally irrelevant? It's likely that the blur was caused by my repair, definitely. When I set the glass into position, it may have set unevenly, and there's no way to tell. It's not designed like a rigid old vintage lens. It's not designed to be repairable by the looks of things. Not designed to be long-lasting. I'm going back out now to take some more shots. Let's see what happens. Unfortunately, the blurring on that Nikon lens is still there in the same place. Oh well, bending the lens back and forth had no effect then. The colours are definitely different between these two images. The Nikon lens actually reminds me of more realistic colours compared to the Tokina lens in this particular image. I remember the actual sky did look more like the Nikon one than the Tokina one. And overall, I think the Tokina image is still the sharpest image. There's a lot more contrast in that image too, I think. Okay, now we have two sets of images. The first set is going to be fully zoomed out, and the second set is going to be of the same thing but fully zoomed in. The first image, we can see that the Nikon is fully zoomed out to 55mm and the Tokina is fully zoomed out to 70mm. The blur in the lower left corner of that Nikon lens is not so prominent here. The blur is probably obscured by the water, the pattern in the water and the colour perhaps. And I think the colour looks better in the Tokina image. It's late evening, and that late evening sun is really captured in its tint. That Tokina kind of hue that it produces, I think it enhances that late evening sunshine. The sky is a little bit washed out though compared to the Nikon sky, but overall I think the Tokina image is a little bit sharper with better contrast. The Tokina seems sharper to me, but I'm not sure if this is actually sharper or if it's just a better contrast, giving better definition. The Nikon does feel softer. The colour though on the Tokina really does stand out. It's a nicer image. It's just a pity that the sky seems a little bit washed out. That could be because I need to stop down, or it could be perhaps because there's more dynamic range in the Tokina lens. I'm not sure. Okay, what we've got here is a rock on the beach, a large rock on the beach, with a smaller object which was found on the floor placed on top of this rock. The camera is sat about 1.5 meters to 2 meters away from the object. And the surprising thing here is that the depth of field on the Tokina lens seems really good. Now, both of these lenses are quite slow lenses, so I'm using them at or around their fully opened aperture. I think by looking at this, I must have been stopped down a little bit more on the Tokina lens, but there's a massive difference. The sharpness and the quality of the Tokina lens is a lot better than the Nikon lens, which you've got to remember is automatically metering for me. So this one was quite an interesting shot. Both of these images are set to infinity focus. So each camera lens, both set on infinity focus. The trees in the background, beyond the water, they're both sharp. And as we come closer to the camera, we should see where that depth of field starts fading. And in the Tokina lens, I think all those rocks are in focus. I think all of them, everything from the front to the back. But the Nikon lens, I think the rocks that are in focus could perhaps be the ones that are the furthest away. And then anything beyond that starts to get a little bit softer. Now, I'm not sure if that's because of the blur, because there was a lot of blur in that corner, and it's very likely that that's exactly what's going on there. But it's the Nikon lens has definitely got some mechanical failure. Do we have a winner? I think we do, but it's probably not for the same reasons you might think. Yes, the Tokina had sharper images, but was this only because the Nikon was defective? Realistically, I would expect the modern lens to beat any old lens in terms of sharpness and image quality, but it seems unfair to judge while one lens is lame. The Tokina is in mint condition, while the Nikon is in bad condition. Repaired and repaired badly by myself at that. So it's not a fair comparison, really. The real comparison should be about the build quality between these two lenses. Plastic is never going to be as durable as metal, but could be designed in a way that facilitates future repair, which this one just doesn't do. I'm a designer by trade, so I notice how things are made and can tell when some effort has gone into making something in a particular way. The old vintage lenses were turned on a lathe, even though they could have been made out of sheet metal, for example. They chose to use a lathe and tap screw threads into them so the lenses could be unscrewed and removed later. It's a deliberate design intention rather than not having any choice. They chose to do this. And that's the thing about this Nikon lens. Even though it's plastic, they still could have chosen to screw the lens in place rather than glue them. It's a design decision that is done to maximize profit by reducing the lifespan of the lens. They need to sell more lenses and keep people buying new ones rather than using old ones. I can understand that, it makes sense. I don't know if the Pro lenses are the same, but for their price I would expect them to be designed a little bit differently. My feeling is that this Nikon lens has well passed the end of its life. So, the winner. The winner has to be the Tokina lens. Even though it's 35 years old, even though it's fully manual, it has to be the winner in this case, for myself. Maybe you don't agree. I wonder if any of you have got a Nikon lens like this, and perhaps maybe you can tell me whether it's as bad as this one. The Tokina lens wins this for me because of its solid construction. This has preserved its function for a long time. Its design, like many others, have prevented unnecessary landfill. Can you imagine all these old lenses just going into the landfill when they just can't be repaired? They've got a bit of haze and they just get dumped. It sounds awful, doesn't it? Like the Nikon lens, this has also been strip cleaned, but it continues to produce good images. My suspicion is that this lens will continue to function for a long time. It's cheap, very cheap, and it's a consumer lens that has surprised me with these results. This lens is especially sharp at its shortest focal length of 70mm. Pentaxforums.com rates this lens quite highly too. It's actually a very surprising lens. Very interesting find. So, if you have one of these lenses and you use it quite often, if you have a Nikon or if you have a Tokina, please let me know what you think of your lenses. Every lens is probably a little bit different. So, like and subscribe if you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you in the next one.